So thank you so much for joining me today. I have with me Greg Armstrong from Run for Water and 84 Days to share his story. On my channel here, For Every Run Do Good, I try to interview people that I find have inspirational stories. And I came across Greg's story in a podcast with Chad Wright, and I'll get to more of that later. But I was hoping you could tell us more about yourself.
Sure. I'm a high school science teacher. I live in Middle Tennessee. I live on a farm here that's been in our family. So it was a Revolutionary War grant. So a lot of roots here in Tennessee. And I guess, a lot of my passion is really trying to get young people involved in volunteer work. And so a lot of the projects that we do with Run for Water and 84 Days it's about engaging young people and trying to use that not only as a platform to teach them to serve and to volunteer, but also it's a lot of those are great platforms of education through science. So that's a big part of my passion.
Excellent. And of course, it's been a challenging year with education. How are you holding up with the adjustments you've had to make as a result of COVID?
Yeah, it has. It's been challenging. There's a lot of things that we're not able to do, especially with the hands-on and the trips, that we were able to take a global trip to Uganda back in January before things hit. But I had a trip to Uganda, a water ministry trip and an 84 days ministry trip, and had about 6 students that we were training to summit Kilimanjaro in Tanzania before our ministry trip. So that was canceled. And we're just hoping that, this next year we can get back and support some of our ministry partners in some of those other countries.
Excellent. Sounds wonderful. And tell me more about the founding of Run for Water in 84 Days. How did they come to be?
Sure. Like I said, we were already doing some water ministry in Honduras, in southern Honduras, and maybe around 2005 to 2007. And, for me, I was just getting into running ultra marathons. And, of course, if you're running ultra marathons, you need, lots of motivation. And I found myself on a lot of these long training runs, and even some of the events that I was doing, the 100-mile races, I would draw strength from, a lot of the individuals that I had shared life with that had a struggle for water. And so, I got to thinking, that would help me to run for a purpose and to use that, running as a platform to kind of share the story of so many individuals in our world that are struggling to get clean water. And so that's how Run for Water started. And initially it started as just, I'm going to do an event to try to raise money for a particular water system. I really didn't have the vision for, an organization necessarily. My first event was to run from the Alabama state line to the Kentucky state line through the state of Tennessee, which I found out later was the original Vol State course that Lazarus Lake came up with. I didn't know that at the time. It was 120 miles, and my goal was to do that in under 24 hours. And I used that as kind of a platform just to share the story about individuals that didn't have clean water. And just over the last 10 to 12 years, it's just kind of grown really organically. It's been a really healthy growth. We went from doing maybe 1 or 2 global trips a year to currently, I guess, pre-COVID, we take, maybe 4 or 5 global trips a year. And then we'll take one, on average, a trip to Appalachia once a month to help individuals in our own country that don't have clean water to drink.
Excellent.
And then 84 days, my first trip to Africa or to Uganda, I had a friend that was already kind of had a ministry there. He kept noticing a lot of these villages that didn't have clean water, or the wells were broken. And so he wanted me to go with him on a survey trip. And my oldest daughter at the time was 15. So I had the opportunity to take her with me on this survey trip. And of course, I'm there looking at it from the perspective of clean water and trying to gather information about who doesn't have clean water and why it's not there and what we can do And my daughter's looking at it from the perspective of a 15-year-old girl. And, as you may know, a lot of the burden of collecting water falls on women and especially teenage girls. And so my daughter started talking to these other teenage girls that were her age and found out, one of their biggest needs is they don't have proper feminine hygiene products. And so once a month, they miss a week of school. And so she came back, really excited about maybe seeing what we could do to try to help those girls in school in Uganda. And so that was the start of 84 Days. And we've done that program for the last 6 years in Uganda and Nicaragua, Haiti, and Costa Rica. So.
Excellent. I think that's the part that resonated with me the most. And just to think that they might miss such a large gap in school and what that does to them over time about their self-esteem when they start to fall back. Because I know education is something I've prided myself in for a very long time. And to see somebody feel like that, really touched my heart. And I was like, gosh, I'm hoping there's something else we could do to help. But something you had mentioned that I think oftentimes with clean water, people associate that as like a third world country problem. But as you mentioned, like it is something still that we face here in the United States, unfortunately. Can you expand more on like what you find, like what are the experiences in Appalachia?
Sure. And it's I don't know, it's really perplexing to me, especially trying to compare the two because they're drastically different. In some ways, the water ministry or solving the water crisis problems in our own country are much more challenging than they are in Uganda. In Uganda or Haiti, I can show up with our toolkit and and have all the wells that I can repair for a week, and it's just simply there's a bearing or there's a part of this well that's broken and it needs to be repaired. And there's some places that don't have wells and they need to have a well drilled, but it's pretty linear in solving that problem.
Right.
Appalachia is not so much. I mean, you have, it's rural poverty in America is really dynamic and challenging because you have individuals not only that are, it's the poorest county in Tennessee, it's Hancock County. If you can think about where Tennessee meets Kentucky and Virginia, it's right there in that corner. Not only is it kind of geographically isolated from Knoxville and some of the Lexington and these other big cities, but then you have pockets within the county, over this, we call them hollers here in the South.
Okay.
Over this holler, there's a family that is completely isolated from everyone else in that community or in that county. And so it's really perplexing. And then of course you have, there's sometimes there's more regulations and there's so many different methods to go about trying to solve that problem, whether it's helping them financially to get hooked up to the water utility that's available. They just can't afford the water utility because those prices are kind of based on a statewide income. And, this county that's well below the poverty level, they just simply can't afford the $1,200 hookup to get water and, the $50 a month bill to pay for the water. And then there's others that we help with wells. And so there's just a lot of challenges with that water ministry.
Wow. And again, I learned about you as a result of running. And I have to say, like, I first did ultra marathons 2 years ago, so it's quite an experience. But what people might see that and think I could never do that, but we all start somewhere. And how did you get into fitness or get into running?
Sure. I've always been a runner. My dad was a part of that, late 70s, early 80s, running craze with your Nike waffles. And I remember as a, 5 or 6 years old, just getting up and, he'd let me ride my bike with him on his 2-mile run in the neighborhood and that kind of thing. And so I've always been a runner. I kind of came into ultra running from the Ironman triathlon. I did a couple of Ironman races in the early 2000s, and that just really wasn't my scene. It was, expensive bikes, and it was just, really expensive. And then I did my first 100-mile race in Arkansas. I think it was 2007, somewhere around in there. And I haven't really turned back since. It's just a really interesting and wonderful community of ultra runners. You have all walks of life, and you have, you can battle and be super competitive with someone over a 100-mile race or a 300-mile race or a last man standing race, but there's just a bond and a camaraderie there that, you won't find in a lot of other sports.
Sure. And I want to say I'd never heard of the last man standing concept until I had heard the podcast that you talked about, that you were speaking on. And I was like, and I love things that are like mentally challenging, like while they're physically challenging, like I love the mental challenge that. And I was like, wow, I said, that has definitely got to be something on my bucket list to give a try one of these days. So are you training for anything currently? I know it's been difficult, over the past year or so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not one to be terribly secretive. The race itself is kind of secretive, but there's a little race in Tennessee, and people know about the in Frozen Head, the Barkley marathons.
Mm.
I'm training for that. That's next. I guess officially, I'm not supposed to tell exactly the date.
Okay, sure.
Kind of secretive, but sometime in the next 6 weeks, that'll take place.
A secretive race with many secrets within it, because I've seen some documentaries on it. So whenever it happens, best of luck to you.
It's sometimes I feel like I'm a little past my prime for that event, but the race director saw fit that I could he let me enter. I think there's sometimes, the last I heard, there can be close to 5,000 people that apply for that race, and generally around 40. So it's a great honor just to be able to participate.
Sure. Okay, maybe that might be an item for my bucket list at some point in time. I have some other goals I'm trying to knock off first, but again, my mission is to help more people get active and become physically active in life and get the most out of life, while also contributing to their community. So we're organizing this 84-mile challenge to benefit 84 days, having it go from April to May. Giving people the advantage, like I was just talking about with my husband today. My daughter thought 84 miles, and he's like, well, it's only a little over a mile a day. So something that anybody could do, whatever form of fitness they enjoy. And again, contributing to the greater good. And what advice do you have for words for anybody that decides to join up or decides to sign up for that?
Yeah. What I love about, I guess, kind of what you're organizing, and, kind of the same with ultra running, is I don't, in my opinion, I guess I'm a little biased, but I don't think there's another sport that really emphasizes that concept of you versus you more. And yes, there are competitions where you're competing against another person, but what really drew me to ultra running more than anything else is, my first 100-mile race. It was not a competition. It was just about me completing that 100 miles. And, there's been some races where I've, really got into the competitive nature of it. But what I love most about ultra running is that, you set your own personal goals and you do what you're capable of doing. And so I guess my advice is, if somebody wants to, have a really lofty goal and, just kind of assess where they are physically, if it's, I think you said they could cycle or bike or walk or run or whatever, just get it done. And I guess my only other encouragement is the spirit of the event is, just it's a great time to really seek and learn empathy for people in our world that, don't have, some of the opportunities that we have. Someone, as far as the 84 days, I think most people they can kind of wrap their head around the fact that, okay, a young girl doesn't have proper feminine hygiene products, therefore she misses a week of school, once a month. But I was repairing a well in a rural village in northern, or I guess about central Uganda. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, what you're doing is so life-changing, and which is a typical comment, because, when you go to a village where they're drinking water from a swamp, these are generally educated people. They know that they're getting typhoid fever. They know that it's making them sick. They just don't have a choice. And so I just assumed he was talking about the water. And I was like, yeah, yes, water is life and it's essential for the health of the community. He said, I'm not talking about the water. He said, I'm talking about what, the program that is going on with the girls in the school. He said, I'm an educator. He said, and what's really tragic about girls not having proper feminine hygiene, it's not just the fact that they miss a week of school, but they miss a week of school this month and then next month. And then after a couple of months, that young girl begins to think that she is intellectually inferior to the young boys. And the young boys begin to think that's the same. And when we all know it's simply just the fact that she's missing school.
Right.
And so just the psychological and the, the emotional, and so you can kind of see that in the culture. And some of the early schools that we were able to introduce the program to, we've been able to go back and get from the director the test scores of the girls, and which naturally, if they can stay in school, that's going to change things. And and their dropout rate has decreased exponentially, simply because the girl's no longer discouraged and she's empowered by the program. So I guess that's the biggest encouragement, is to think about who you're doing that for, and let that be your motivating factor to get out and get it done each day.
Excellent. And I couldn't agree more with everything that you said. And even going back to, creating those own goals against yourself, that, once you achieve a goal like that, like achieving your next goal almost becomes easier, and accomplishing your goals almost then becomes a habit. And as you said, it's more than just doing it for yourself, but what you're, contributing to the world and the community at large. So I really appreciate your time today so much. Where can people learn more about 84 Days or Run for Water, or get in touch with you?
Sure. Runforwater.net is our website. Talks about our water ministry, and then 84days.net is the website that tells you more about the 84 Days ministry.
Excellent. Thank you. And I just ask for folks to stay tuned to my website, www.everyrundogood.com, and also on our social media page of Every Run Do Good on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll have that event posted live very soon. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for sharing your story, and I really hope it serves as an inspiration to somebody else.
Sure. Thank you so much, Candace, and thanks
Thank you.
for everyone for participating.
Thank you.